Hello and welcome to another episode of the Work.knits podcast. My name is Lauren and I'm coming to you from England in the United Kingdom. Welcome. For those of you returning, you'll notice I'm in a very different setup. I'm in a completely different room. I'm in a completely different house. I'm in a completely different part of the country. We are probably about one step away from making our move from where we have been living in the southwest. We are moving in like temporarily in with some family, which we're very lucky to do, very grateful to them for being so generous as we ease our transition into a new county and into new jobs and all sorts of fun and games. So we're kind of going to be playing around over the next few episodes with this setup. As I'm looking, maybe hopefully that's a bit straighter, I don't know. We're going to be playing with setup. I haven't got all my normal things with me. I normally have a kind of tripod that I fix my phone to. I don't have that, so we're just going to be playing around a bit, and we're also going to be playing around with where is best in this room to record podcasts. We've got some beautiful natural light, lucky to have quite a lot of space, so yeah, but it's also going to be our bedroom, the room I work in, and the room I knit in, so there's a lot of stuff to fit into this room. As you'll see, knitting unpacking is going reasonably well. In some cubbies that you can't see down here, I have my skeined yarn and then my balled up yarn down here, and then I actually have some of my hand knit items back behind me here. So we're getting there, but just please bear with me whilst we make this transition and whilst I kind of figure things out in this new setting. But all of that said and done, I do have some normal kind of podcast knitting content to talk to you about today. I'm really excited actually. My mojo is strong right now. I hope other people are feeling good crafting mojo. I know the summer months, particularly when it's quite warm. It's very warm today if you can't tell by the light sheen on my face. The summer months tend to be pretty destructive when it comes to knitting mojo. I don't know if crocheters have the same thing. Sewing, I guess, is a bit more universal when it comes to the seasons, but at the same time, when it's beautiful sunshine, you probably don't want to be sat indoors on a sewing machine. So swings and roundabouts, but I hope your knitting mojo is strong. I hope you've got something nice to drink, and let's dive straight in to a finished object. So I've just had a sip of coffee, refresh. Right, my first finished object is a headband that none of you have seen before. This was not even on the needles when I last recorded a week ago. This headband is self-drafted. I didn't follow an exact pattern, although there are lots of patterns for headbands like these on Ravelry. I'm sure other people have done their twists far nicer than I have. I kind of made this up. I think there is a proper official way to do it. I am not going to put this headband on given the current temperature. I think it is in the mid to high 20s here in the UK. What did I do for this and why? Well, I guess basically I'm trying to think ahead to what I'm going to need in my wardrobe in the autumn, and one thing I really struggle with commuting is, particularly when it's cold, I want my ears covered. It's breezy, stood on train platforms and walking into work, but I kind of don't want the top of my head covered because that can give you really bad hat hair. So I used to have a headband, but it was a bit more of a kind of sporty looking thing, and I wanted something a bit chicer. So here it is. It looks massive compared to, when I'm holding it close to the camera, but it is the right size for my head. I made this in, I'm just going to grab the label actually from under on the thing that the camera's held on. Sorry if that wobbled everything. I picked up a ball of Fonte in their new Fado base when I was in Retrosara Rosa Pomar in Lisbon. And I picked up just one ball, 50-gram ball, and this is kind of an Aran worsted weight yarn, quite thick. And I knew I wanted to do a kind of one-off project, and I thought maybe a hat. But actually, when I started looking at the meterage, when I started looking at hat patterns, I was thinking, that's not gonna go. Now, having knit this headband, I think I probably could have got a hat out of it, but this headband gave me a bit more flexibility. This took about 3 or 4 cast-ons to get the right stitch count, because as I said, I wasn't using a pattern. I ended up with 40 stitches on a 4.5mm needle, and I love the fabric. It's double folded over, so it's double thickness, and I just measured my head, knit a tube to about I think I took about 2 inches off my head circumference, so I think I measured my head at 22 inches, kind of going the long way round, like the, you know, the longest part of my head, not, you know, straight round. And I then, I think, a 20-inch tube. So I just took 2 inches off because this fabric is very stretchy, so I wanted a bit of negative ease, just kind of hugged my head. And then I cast off, so I had a long tail cast on, and I did a kind of knit two through the back loop, slip the stitch back onto the left hand needle, that cast off, a stretchy cast off. I then folded the ends together in a kind of way that did like this, but it's hard to describe what I actually did. I think I know what I did wrong, but anyway, it's turned out into a pretty nice twist, I think, and I could wear that at the front or at the back, or even on the side if I'm feeling a bit, you know, asymmetrical. But yes, a headband, a really quick project once I'd got the right stitch count. I think I started with like 60 stitches, then I tried like 55, and then I ended up at 40. So it was a few different cast-ons to get this right. But yes, a really lovely project. And also this yarn, I really enjoyed knitting with this. It's kind of got, it's very smooth, but not in a kind of overly superwashed way. It's very soft, but you also kind of feel like it's proper wool. It's a French, 100% French wool blend, I believe. And yeah, I've never knit with Fonte before, so really enjoyed that process. And in case anyone wants the colour, it's colour 661. So this headband is my one and only finished object for this week. I'm just gonna pop that there for now. Oops, the label's on the floor. This is going really well today. And I have a sip of coffee, and then we can discuss some works in progress. Okay, so works in progress wise, I have not put any work into my socks that I was working on last week. I kind of parked those. I didn't have any train journeys this week. I've got 2 weeks off work whilst I changed jobs. So no train knitting, which actually meant I could delve into some of the stuff that has been a bit more, well, has been a bit more challenging to move around, let's just put it that way. Oops, almost knocked my coffee. Very conscious that my chair is, I think. Oh, the joys of a new podcast setup. So what have I been working on? Let me stop wittering about setup and talk to you about knitting. So lots of you will recognise, if you're a returning viewer, recognise this project from quite a long time ago. And from this shot, it looks like I have made no progress. But alas, not true. I have finished my first sleeve. So what is going on here? Well, I think the last time I showed this on the podcast, I had got to a point where I knew I wasn't going to have enough yarn, the dark grey yarn, which is Sadness Garn Tresco. It's a 80% Norwegian wool, 20% nylon blend. And I really, in my original picturing for the sweater, as a very brief recap for those of you who are new to the podcast or didn't see my last conversation about the sweater, this sweater is a doodle. I have not used a pattern. I have not done any calculations. I made the colour work up as I went. There is so much room for this to go wrong, putting that out there. And one of the things that, in inverted commas, went wrong was that I do not have enough of the Sadness Garn Tresco to finish it in the way I wanted. I wanted the sleeves and the rest of the body to all be in the Sadness Garn Tresco, and it's not going to be, but that's fine. So what I did was I got to this point in the body and a certain point on the sleeves, and I took the rest of the Sadness Garn that I had and I divided it into 4 balls, 2 smaller balls for the sleeves, 2 balls for the bottom of the body. The reason for 2 balls for the bottom of the body is I'm going to do a split hem, quite a deep one. I can't remember how I did the calculations on how much I did for the sleeves versus the body. I want to say I did something like 15 grams for each of the sleeves versus like 30 grams for each of the body. And then what I had started to do was, in my contrast colour, which is Rico Designs Superba Luxury Alpaca Sock, I had started to knit horizontal striped rib, and I was about 8 repeats in on this sleeve. And I was like, oh, do I like that? Do I not? Do I want to colour block it instead? Anyway, I put this down for ages because I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I'm so pleased I did that because I've now come back to it. And as you can see, I've ended up going for a vertical striped rib instead. Now, some of you might notice that the texture of this vertical stripe rib is rather interesting. I don't know how well the camera is going to pick this up, but the lighter yarn, the Rico, kind of doesn't, it just doesn't look like a standard rib. And let me explain why. So when I did the contrast up in the yoke, I held just a single strand of the Rico, and it's it's very thick for a fingering weight. It's quite a lot thinner than the Sadness Garn Tresco, which apparently is also a fingering weight yarn. I don't really believe that that's the wrong word. I wouldn't classify it using, you know, this needle gauge, this, etc. They're very different weights of yarn. But I used just a single strand for the yoke, and that's kept the yoke thick but kind of drapey and stretchy. On the cuffs, I wanted these cuffs to have a bit more structure, and as you can see, they can basically stand up by themselves. They're really, really quite dense. I've used 2 strands of the Rico on the sleeves and on the cuffs, and where I have decided to make the Rico designs the purl stitches in a 1x1 rib, the double stranding has meant that those purl stitches, instead of sitting recessed behind the knit stitches as you would normally have in rib, they've actually made them stick out and made it almost looks like a double purl bump because of the 2 strands held together. And it's created the most amazing fabric where the purl stitches are actually pretty much more prominent than the knit stitches, which was a completely kind of fluke. Like, I didn't really think that would happen. I didn't know that would happen. But it's beautiful. And then what I did was a 1 row. So you've got at the bottom here 2 rounds of the Rico design held double, doing both the knit and the purl stitches. Then I switched to having the knit stitches in the Sadness Garn Tresco, and then at the end here I did 1 round of just plain knit stitches in the Rico design, and then I did a standard cast off, just knit 2, pass 1 over, knit 1, pass 1 over, etc. And that's because I don't want the cuffs to be massively stretchy, because I want them to really hold their form. So now that I figured out, and I like this, I feel like it's kind of detailed, it's different to the main body, but there's kind of a shout back to this pattern right at the top and this bit down at the bottom. So I'm really happy. So I now need to do the same on the other sleeve, and then I need to do the same for the split hem at the bottom of the sweater. The only thing is, I'm knitting this on 3.5mm needles. And as I said, the Sadness Garn Tresco I think is quite thick. I don't think it's a fingering. I'd say this is more like a DK weight, but it's a very rustic, despite the kind of 20% nylon, it's a very rustic yarn, and I'm finding that and holding the Rico Designs double on 3.5mm needles, it's making exactly the weight of sweater that I wanted, but it's just very hard going on my wrists, and it's very hard going on my thumb, because when I'm purling, I'm having to push the needle through because the fabric is so dense. So I will keep plugging away on this. I could have, time-wise, I could have had this done for this episode, this whole sweater finished. But as I say, because it's quite tough on my hands, I'm having to alternate projects just to make sure I don't damage my wrists or kind of create a hole in my thumb. But we will get there. And when we do, I will do a full lowdown on all the details on this sweater, because it's got quite an interesting construction. I think it's really flattering on. It creates exactly the shape I wanted. So yes, I will do a more detailed review when I have finished the other cuff and the bottom. But yeah, very happy with how this is going. So that has been one big load of progress this week. I'll have another sip of coffee, and then I will chat to you about some of my other works in progress. Okay, so please excuse the ducking down to pick up boxes, etc. But another cast on that I don't think I had cast on when I last chatted to you. I think last week I showed you a bottom up top that I was working on using Malabrigo sock and Tuka wool fingering, and I was kind of self-drafting, and it was stripy, and I'd said at the time I wasn't quite sure how it was going. So since then I ripped all that out. And I'm really glad I did, because when I took it off the needles, it was about, oops, sloshing my coffee everywhere. Whoops-a-daisy. The project was about this wide, which, you know, would be absolutely no issue if that's what I'd intended and the size I needed, but that wasn't the size I needed and was not what I had intended. So massively too big for me, so I'm very glad I ripped it out. I mean, it felt like it was very slow going with the knitting, and that's just because I'm not used to knitting that kind of circumference. So Anyway, ripped that out, and I don't know about everyone else, but there's so many amazing patterns out there at the moment that I really want to purchase, but I can't choose between them, but I also can't buy all of them. So I've been trying to wait to purchase patterns until I've got kind of a weekend where I can just like mull over which patterns I want. Obviously I won't take the whole weekend to do it, but just like a weekend where I've not got house moves, weddings, all sorts on my mind, where I can just kind of let the ideas percolate and then come to a decision. So that's what I have been trying to do, but I knew I really wanted to knit up this Malabrigo sock, and so I just bit the bullet, and I was kind of torn between a lento, a love note, and a ranunculus. And someone in the comments had mentioned that the ranunculus is a pattern that is both a round yoke and raglan construction, which was one of my questions in the last episode, following me finishing my Strange Brew sweater, which is exactly that. It's a combo compound construction. And so I thought, actually, yeah, I've got to knit one of those. I've definitely missed the bandwagon. They were, you know, obviously hugely popular a while ago. So I'm about this far through my ranunculus. This is knit up purely at the moment in the Malabrigo sock in the colourway Turner 851. I think I'm going to need to use a bit of that tuku wool fingering to do an I-cord edging on the neckline and on the sleeves, and I'll explain why now. So pick my box back up the floor, so everyone. So what am I up to here? So I did not do the ribbing at the top. I like to go back in afterwards and pick up my cast on edge anyway, so that's why I didn't do that. I've cast on the 3rd size, but I'm using 5mm needles, not 6, because in my interchangeable needle set, I have only got up to 5mm, and then I have bought the occasional larger size needle, but the next one up I have is a 6.5, and that seemed too big. So I'm knitting the 3rd size, but on 5mm needles. I was following, I don't know how well you can see this, I was following the pattern. I don't know if you can see the kind of like the pulled stitches, so to speak. I missed a round of the pulled through stitches at the top, just because I didn't quite understand the instruction to begin with. That was me being a bit of an idiot. Then I did one round of those, which I love. I then did a couple of rounds of the next stitch pattern, followed the pattern down to the point when you do this kind of what's becoming a very kind of recognisable diamond shaped lace. And then I continue to work the pattern in terms of the number of rows requested, but I stopped doing the textured yoke. And that's because why? That's because I kind of want this to have a t-shirt feel rather than a sweater feel. And I know if it's a proper yoke, for me, that's going to feel less like a top and more like a sweater. That's just my personal aesthetic, what I'm beginning to understand about myself. So I did the lace and then just knit flat. I then did the kind of compound raglan increases, and then separated for the sleeves. I then knit straight for a bit because I didn't feel at that sleeve separation point, as is normally the case with me, I didn't feel my yoke was long enough, and I didn't feel the sleeve armhole would be as big as I would like it. So I knit straight for a bit, flat for a bit on both sides separately, then joined again in the round, and I've done maybe 2 inches past the sleeve separation. So yeah, I would like to now go back in. I think I'm going to finish the neckline with a I-cord, quite a loose I-cord, and the same around the armholes. Going to keep this as a top. I've got about this much left in my cake, and that's got to do my body. I want to prioritise getting the body to the length I want it, and then if I've got some more of this yarn, you know, if there's any of this left, I'll do the I-cords in that. If I don't, I will do it in some of the scraps. I say scraps. Where I'd done the stripes in my original whip in the tuku wool fingering, I had been cutting the yarn and tying it off rather than carrying 2 sets of yarn up as floats. So I then got these the little tiny nuggets of tuku wool that it would be great to use those for the I-cord. So yeah, this is my ranunculus. I think there was one bit that I didn't really understanding the pattern, but that might have just been me and the headspace I was in when I was trying to knit it. I'm trying to remember. But anyway, I'm loving it. I love the kind of drapiness of the fabric. I'm going to be really fascinated because I didn't swatch for this. So I'm going to be really fascinated how much this grows with blocking. Obviously it's a superwash yarn. It could grow quite a bit. I might wait until I've got maybe like 6 to 8 inches on the body, and depending how far this yarn goes, and then put it onto barber cords and block it at that point, like at least steam block it, if not wet block it, just to get a gauge of how much it's growing, because it might be I don't then need to do anything more on the body, and that might leave me some more yarn for the eye cords. But yeah, really loving this pattern. I can see why so many other people do. It's quite a quick knit. I do find the larger needles not as enjoyable to knit on, I'm going to be honest. Larger needles or very, very dense fabrics, not my jam. I really am a kind of 3.5, 4mm kind of gal. Yeah, and anything from like 3.25 up to 4mm is my like prime. I know for other people the idea of 3.25 or 3.5mm for fingering weight jumpers is just like awful, but most of my jumpers are at that gauge. That's just the gauge I like. But anyway, I am making some good progress. That is, you know, that's all done since the last time I spoke to you. In addition, excuse me, to the cuff on my kind of doodle sweater and the headband. So some really good progress made there. The final whip I was going to mention is my grink wrap. I have made not masses of progress, if I'm honest. But I will show you nonetheless. I will try and do it without clanking my needles too much, but I'm still kind of progressing up this one edge. As a recap, for anyone who hasn't seen this before or is new to the channel, this is my first intarsia project, and this is a kind of self-drafted intarsia wrap. I'm holding, apart from this grey bit at the end, ignore that for a moment, I'm holding one strand of Knoll Yarn Super Soft weaving weight yarn that comes on a massive cone, hence my box that I keep carrying around. There you go, there's the cone. I'm holding that with various shades of mohair to create these contrasts. The lighter colour here is Isaya's mohair in the colourway Ecru. I had a ball of, or like part of a ball of that left over from my contrast sweater by Petite Knit that I made. This darker pink or medium pink is a skein of Gulrock Fibres naturally dyed mohair in the colour rose gold, and the silk core is the most beautiful golden colour where it's picked up one of the natural dyes, and then the mohair part is this gorgeous pink. And then actually in my packing process I was a bit panicked yesterday. I couldn't find the ball and I thought it was in a box that it turns out it's not in. But I have another ball of mohair in a very dark kind of cranberry colour from Shalana, a 25 gram ball of that. Now I have no idea where that is currently, but that will be what I will then grade into, and that will be the kind of intarsia contrast later on. I'm then going to knit a big border in 2 strands of another of the Knoll yarns in the weaving weight lamb's wool, but this time in the colourway Oxford, and I'm holding 2 strands of that together, and I'll do a big border around the whole thing. So that's that project, quick overview of it, but not very much progress. So I think that is pretty much it for the kind of whips that I've been working on. Excuse the lean down, the box. I think I'll have a quick sip of coffee, and then we'll chat about a quick future knitting plan that will probably be cast on between now and the next time I speak to you. And then we'll just recap briefly on the giveaway I'm running. Okay, so future knitting plans. I am trying to get a couple of these really long-term whips off my needles. The Tresco doodly sweater that I was showing you with the big sleeves, that's been on the needles since kind of like March, February time, a long time. Normally it doesn't take me that long to knit jumpers, but there's just been design decisions, bits I've wanted to pause on. So that's taken me a while. Another long-term project I had on needles was a Strange Brew sweater by Tin Can Knits that I modified quite a lot. That was on hold because I needed to frog or unravel another project in order to get the yarn to finish that. So those have been on my needles for ages, and I was just kind of wanting to clear the deck slightly At the same time, I have been casting on lots of new things. So it's kind of a balance. I have one more kind of really long-term sweater that is currently at our old place that I'll be packing up and bringing this week. That is also on 3.5mm needles, so I think I will go back to that project once I finish the doodle sweater, because I'm like using the same interchangeable needle tips for that one. So yeah, but I'm looking forward to going back to that. That is knit in 2 strands held together of Wool Dreamers Mantralope, which is like an unspun pencil roving, which I was really enjoying. And then I'm steeking the sleeve holes, I'm steeking the sides of the sweater, lots of steeking going on, lots of colour work. And it's kind of using up lots of scraps from my stash for like colour work across the main body. So I'm very excited about that. But it just also is a very warm project to be working on at this time of year. So that is in my future. I should imagine I have some other long-term whips that I'm kind of like forgetting about. I know there's at least a shawl that is a very long-term whip that I need to finish. But yeah, I think I'm doing quite well getting rid of some of these, well, not getting rid of, but finishing and getting off the needles some of these longer-term whips. The other thing that I'll definitely want to do this week is do more of my spinning. I have done a little bit more since I last spoke to you, but not enough to warrant kind of getting it all out and showing you. And I don't think it would be like recognisable on camera how much has or hasn't been done. But hopefully we'll have an update on that for the next episode. But in terms of concrete new plans, I picked up again when I was at Retrosaria Rosa Pomar a couple of different skeins, and I wanted to combine them with, or like little balls, I wanted to combine them with a bit of yarn that I bought at Wonderwool Wales. I picked up a ball of Peggle by Rosa Pomar. This is a breed-specific yarn composed of Cerro de Estrella and Portuguese merino wool. It is kind of a fingering weight. They recommend 3 to 4mm needles. You get 220 meters in 50 grams. And this is the colourway 02. It's a gorgeous like pinky orange. The camera's not quite doing it justice. I want to contrast that with another skein that I bought at Retrosaria Rosa Pomar. This is one of their, like, it's not one of theirs, but they kind of are stocking it type thing, or kind of selling it on the manufacturer's behalf. This is a Surrey alpaca. The label is right in the middle, so I can't tell you all the details, but I've caked that up. That was a little 50-gram skein. So those two together, plus some River Knits minis, 20-gram minis. I don't know the colourway for this, but it's this gorgeous like dark orangey marmalade colour. So I've got 2 of those, but I'll only hold up 1. But basically I want to do a colourwork cowl in this combination. Now I can't decide whether to get my alternate dictionary with all those colourwork motifs. I can't decide whether to get that out and design my own, or whether to buy a pattern. I have been looking at one of Jennifer Steingass's patterns. She's got this gorgeous cowl that's got a zigzag motif, but the zigzags also alternate knit versus, garter versus stockinette. That looks awesome. There's also an Andrew Maru pattern that I'm eyeing up. So I've kind of got to decide whether I want to create something very unique, kind of because it's kind of composed by me, in inverted commas, or whether I want the joy of following a pattern. And I've kind of got to weigh that up in my mind. But anyway, I think what it might come down to slightly is like yarn quantity, like what those different patterns request in terms of the quantities of each colour and how many colours. But yes, this is in my future and it's making me very happy. It's not quite coming up on camera in a way that does it justice, but that is an idea. I still also have an idea for a intarsia cabled pattern using the kind of last ball that I got at Retrosaria Rosa Pomar. This is Siona from Wool Dreamers. I have wanted to try this for so long since it's been released. It's gorgeous looking. I've got this in the colour Ozetta and I really want to contrast it with some Ushatita. Ushatita, I think this is, it's really interesting. It's not a sock yarn, it's not merino singles. It's just like a really beautifully spun golden, I think probably superwash yarn. But anyway, I really would love to make something in these two. So that is some future knitting you might be able to expect over the coming weeks. I might, well, over the next week or so, 2 weeks. You may also see me go completely rogue though, because whenever I tell you I'm going to do something, I end up doing something completely different. I have been very lucky to grow my stash considerably this year compared to previous years. I have never bought as much yarn as I have bought this year. So I do also have some skeins of John Arbon Knit by Numbers DK on the original base that I was planning on potentially making into like a kind of vesty tunic thing. So I might end up casting that on. I also have some skeins of one of the other bases, I can't quite remember what they've called it, like Elements or something. Beautiful kind of loose woolen 2-ply yarn, which I also have a kind of contrast mini skein. So I might make that into a shawl. I mean, there are just so many options, but one thing I would say that's very interesting is I used to put my stash into a kind of sliding cupboard with glass doors and then on a kind of pegboard. And here I've just got 2 cubbies. One has all my caked up and balled yarn, and one has my skeins. And even though I can't see as many of my cakes as I can when they're up on a pegboard in this cubby because most of them are hidden away, I am feeling more inspired by my stash. I don't know if that's just because I've gone through it all to put it away, but feeling particularly inspired. So you may see me casting on all the things. And at the moment, I'm just giving myself permission to park projects for a bit, go with what inspires me. That's the theme at the moment. I'm gonna have another sip of coffee and then I'll come on to the giveaway, and then I will probably leave you lovely people to enjoy your day. Okay, giveaway. So a couple of episodes ago, I said I was going to run a rolling giveaway. Which I kind of had originally said it was going to be kind of, I don't know, I can't even remember which way around it was. I think it was like on even episodes, I'd announce winners from the odd numbered episodes. It's ended up going completely the opposite around just because I missed a week. So for the benefit of, I've probably confused you by explaining what it was rather than what it is. But essentially now, on every odd numbered episode, so last episode was episode 13 and I announced a winner, and that winner was drawn from anyone who commented on the previous episode. So it's got to be the episode before, directly before. So last episode I announced a winner from episode 12. I put the YouTube handle of that individual in the episode up on the screen. So I haven't yet heard from that individual, so I will look forward to hearing from them. But essentially what the prize is any one of the patterns from my Ravelry store. I can give it to you either via Ravelry, or I can send you a PDF if Ravelry isn't to your liking, and I can of course also send you, if Ravelry it isn't accessible for you, I can of course send you pictures of the different designs so that you can choose without having to access Ravelry. But basically giving you one of my patterns for free. I would love to get to a point where I can do a rolling giveaway that involves yarn too, but for now this is kind of what's sustainable for me, and I do really want to have some way of giving back to all of you for your support for this channel and for me, and I want to be able to do that on a regular basis. So this is the way it works at the moment. Maybe in the future we'll also extend to gifting a pattern from another designer. We will see, but hopefully for now this is enough of a gift. I hope it's still exciting. We have had about 30 new subscribers since the last episode, so if those are new viewers, welcome. Thank you so much for subscribing, checking out this podcast, this channel, and for supporting me. If those are kind of long-term viewers who have just not taken the step yet to subscribe and who did so after the little chat around the channel in the last episode, thank you so much. It really is so appreciated. I've also had more and more people checking out my Ko-fi page, so thank you so much if you've gone over there, kind of had a look around, had a little assessment of whether it suits you or not. I will continue to put details of that in the description box below this episode. But yeah, just feeling very grateful for this community, for having this kind of interaction with you all, the comments, everyone telling me what they're knitting on, everyone talking about similar patterns and different pattern ideas. I love it, particularly at this point where, you know, this time, well, English is, I'm really struggling today. Particularly at the moment, with life in general being quite hectic, this is providing a real point of solidarity for me, a real continuity. So you are all, by interacting and engaging with this podcast in any way, you are gifting me so much, even without maybe knowing it. So thank you so, so much. I'm going to stop there because I'm waffling, and also because I'm just struggling to even compose coherent sentences. So I will wish you all a very, very good week. I will be back again next Sunday with another episode. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay well, happy making, and I will speak to you very soon. Bye.